All right, awesome. We're recording. Okay, so, all right, back to the presentation. So, all right, the importance of a DECA community. Now, one of the biggest problems I think with DECA is that it kind of lends itself to a reputation of being kind of cutthroat, right? Like some of the people who have your like investment banking internships or you're taking your college level business courses sometimes tend to dominate DECA, and that can make it very intimidating for new members to join. But the best DECA chapters are the ones that have the strongest community. When you have a strong community, people are naturally engaging more. And when they engage more, it's not just the 2 or 3 people that go to ICDC. Your whole chapter does better. And that's why when you go to ICDC, you see some schools with 20 to 30 people coming from, their schools. The reason they have that is because they have such a strong community. Maybe if we ignore Toronto, right? I think Toronto is an example of a pretty cutthroat area of DECA. But in general, when you have a strong community, everybody naturally does better and everyone has fun, right? They look forward to DECA. It's not an after school chore where you have to sit and do a role play, right? It's an opportunity to meet with your advisors, talk with friends, and, with a nice spice of business in the middle. So the 3 goals of a strong community are to boost member engagement, right? You want everybody involved in whatever DECA activity you're doing, right? Very rarely should you have some type of DECA activity in your chapter where it's just a few people are, being involved. That's not necessarily the move here. So boost member engagement. When you have a strong community, that also naturally leads to more member engagement. So once you make efforts to boost it, it kind of is self-sustaining. You'll just get more member engagement. Number 2 is to lighten the environment. And I know I kind of just touched on this a little bit, but you really want to move the perception of DECA from the super cutthroat competitive club. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, DECA is a competitive club, right? You're going there to compete, you're going there to do a role play, you're going there to do a written test. But, within your chapters, maybe you've been to state, maybe you've been to ICDC. I hope you know that there are moments where it's just fun, where you get to be with your friends, you get to just talk about, random business topics. That's the environment you want to promote in DECA. And lastly, it leads to retention and growth within your chapter. Typically what happens every year with a lot of DECA chapters is, they have a really good year. ICDC comes and passes in April. And when it's time to kind of rebuild your club in August, as the year kind of progresses and the summer ends and the new school year starts, a lot of people lose DECA members, partially because, the school year accelerates. People don't necessarily want to come back to DECA. If you can make this community fun, open, and inviting, you will have people coming back to DECA year in a year. And what that means is your chapter is going to grow and you don't really have to do much about it, as long as you can just create a community and maintain it. All right, so here's our first topic we're going to be talking about: building a digital presence. So every time we go through one of these categories in our agenda, we're going to ask ourselves, how can this actually work to improve a community with the 3 goals I just mentioned? All right, so social media. Now, social media is probably one of the best ways that you can promote this idea of DECA as a community, and a little bit more, lighthearted, not super competitive. Social media is a great way to gain quick exposure within your school. And it's also a good way to gain quick exposure within your larger town, right? Because you have a community within your school, within other clubs, with other teachers, but your school is also part of your community, which makes your DECA chapter part of your community. So all those small businesses, all those small stores, all those small organizations, those could all be touch points for your DECA chapter, which in turn grows a larger community. Right, your school's DECA chapter could be known all throughout your town, which is a great way to have DECA get a name and a reputation within your city. Social media also naturally creates new opportunities for your chapter and your members to interact, while also promoting your chapter's popularity. So if membership is something you're struggling with, social media and creating a community can help you with that. So before I actually start talking about some of the social media strategies, I just want to gauge on how social media is doing in some of your chapters. So I'm just going to put a quick poll in Google Meets. It should take you about like 5 seconds to answer it. So just answer that when you get a chance. What are the biggest problems with social media in your chapter? Maybe you're part of your social media team in school. Maybe you're just following your social media account in school, or maybe it simply doesn't even exist. So today we're going to be talking about the ways that you could potentially boost this or bring these ideas to the forefront in your chapter. And just a quick word on what you can do with some of these ideas, right? Like chances are some of you might not be on your school's leadership board. Maybe some of you are. What you can do is you can bring these ideas to your advisors or to your leadership board, or you can reach out to your advisor and pitch this idea and take charge of it, right? If your school doesn't have a social media account, for example, go to your advisor and ask them, could I make a social media account? And take some of these ideas and build your social media account for DECA. All right, so it looks like low engagement is one of the biggest problems. All right, we'll see how we can tackle that. So, right, there's kind of two avenues here that you can take. If your chapter doesn't have a social media account already, right, super good idea to ask your chapter advisor ASAP, maybe even tomorrow, about the school policy for social media accounts, right? Some schools maybe prevent you from having social media accounts. Maybe some schools have like rules on who you can tag and whatnot. So go ask around and see if you can actually start a social media account for your chapter's DECA. And if you already have one, now we have to talk about ways to organize it and actually make it diverse. So a few content ideas. Now, these content ideas will naturally build into engagement, right? If you're posting the same thing every day or every week, you're not going to get that much engagement in your Instagram account. That's just how social media works, right? Some of the accounts you may follow that are different from your friends are posting new, maybe news articles or new music or something every day. That's how they build engagement. That's how they build followers. So a few Instagram ideas that you can use, and you have to kind of vary these around. You can't keep them super consistent. Is to number one, do a DECA recap, right? Maybe if you just had a meeting on a Wednesday or a Thursday, you want to do a quick meeting recap of what happened in that meeting. So you take a few pictures of the DECA chapter, the meeting, and you just write about the few main points that were discussed. It can just be like one slide in Canva. Like maybe you talked about role play, maybe you talked about testing. What this does is it keeps your DECA chapter in the loop within your community, and the community can actually see that your DECA chapter is active and they're actually putting an effort towards helping their members. If your DECA account is radio silence, on the other hand, people might even question if your DECA chapter is even running or if it's actually doing well. So DECA recaps are a way to make sure that your chapter looks active. With DECA recaps, it doesn't only have to be meetings. It could also just be taking pictures of members and giving them recognition for their awards, which leads into the second Instagram idea for member highlights. Now, member highlights are a great way to actually directly boost engagement.
I can't take notes because I was at school the whole time. Leadership and stuff, like getting engagement.
All right. So, all right, I just mute that, but that's all right. All right. So anyways, where was I? So member highlights, right? Member highlights are a good way to actually directly boost engagement. A member highlight could be just picking like a DECA member of the month where you just talk about, what DECA event they're in, or maybe that they've shown significant progress with role plays. Member highlights are a good way to, broadcast these members where at the same time, remember the comment section, right? A lot of their friends might be commenting like, oh, good job. Like, oh, go do this in DECA, whatever it might be, right? When people hype each other up in comments, that's how you build a lot of comments, which brings a lot of people to your profile, which leads to more interaction. So member highlights, it's a low effort and a great way to actually boost the morale of your club and also help your DECA community and social media account. Another thing you can do is to promote holidays and school events on your social media page, right? Like DECA isn't just a business club. Sure, on the surface level, it is business, but you do other things in DECA besides just business. And you want to promote that and run with that idea on your social media account. So you can post things on the DECA account that aren't purely DECA. For example, right, Thanksgiving is coming up. Maybe you just want to take a video of your chapter saying Happy Thanksgiving, or a few DECA members saying what they're thankful for. What that shows is that DECA isn't just about business, and you do care about the community, and you do care about these holidays, and you're more of a diverse club than just talking about like economic equilibrium. Same thing with school events, right? If your school is having like a spirit day, maybe you want to take a picture of your DECA with your DECA chapter with spirit wear or school spirit wear. So that's kind of what you can do within your school. But again, remember that, like I said, your DECA chapter is part of a larger community. What contributes to that larger community is local businesses. So one way to take the reach of your DECA social media account and expand it outwards is to reach out to these smaller local businesses. So local businesses, for example, are, they have their own stories, they have their own struggles, they have their own successes. What DECA can do is, because it's, business related, they can highlight these stories and just post it on their account. And, for someone in your school just scrolling through and they see a post about a business coming from their school's DECA account, it's a little bit interesting because it's not typical, right? You don't see a lot of other school clubs going, outside their club and looking at places in the community to highlight. Maybe it's like a one-time event they do, but they don't do it consistently and it isn't always thorough. So what you can do is talk about a local business and maybe talk about how that business, started in your community, what that business has been doing to, bounce back from COVID and whatnot. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this. Last thing you can do is to feature alumni, right? Alumni are a great way to get your DECA chapter with some traction and also show the longevity of DECA as a community. I think as DECA members, right, we're often told that DECA is going to help you so much in college. It's going to help you so much with interviews and whatnot. But we don't actually get to realize that until we don't do DECA anymore and we're out of high school. What alumni can do is give you a little bit more reassurance when people tell you that DECA is going to help you, because they've just come out from a DECA experience, right? Now they're right in college. This is where some of us will be in a year or two. So they can directly tell you the specific situations where DECA helped them, and also show that DECA is something that actually sticks with people even after they leave the school, which in turn helps your community. So all of these 5 ideas, which are not all the different ways you can go with social media, in some way they do help your community and show that DECA is more than just a pure business club. And there's also some fun and lightheartedness involved. All right. Now, how do you actually do this? Well, here's the thing, right? I know it's easy to say, like, here's some social media ideas, just do them. Usually what happens is, a DECA chapter will be really good with these ideas. They'll have like 2 or 3 great social media posts within a week. And then as you scroll down their post history, it's like, it comes from like 2 posts a week to like 1 post every 2 weeks, then like 1 post a month, like 1 post every 3 months, and then it's radio silence, like the account's dead. In order to avoid that, right, what you can do is build some organization into your social media account. And what you can do that is by creating a very basic social media weekly calendar, right? This is just some like a marketing calendar I pulled off of Google, but it's not very difficult to go into Google Sheets and create something similar to this, where you maybe have Instagram as one of your social media sites. You list out Monday through Sunday, and you just plan like maybe 2 posts a week, whether that be on like Wednesday and Friday, like Monday and Thursday. And on these different days, you can just set different content topics, right? Maybe on Monday, you decide to have a member of the month. And on Thursday, you decide to have your meeting recap. Or maybe every Wednesday, you're going to give a chance for some alumni to speak. What this does is it removes a lot of the stress from you for having to think about what to actually put on your social media account. And it makes sure that you're not going to really fall off schedule as long as you can follow this. So that's the organization. To actually create some of this content, right? Canva is by far your best friend. Canva has all the templates you can pick from. It has all the designs, all the fonts, whatever you need, Canva has. So you can go in about 10 minutes, go to Canva, and you can whip up a DECA post for your upcoming chapter's meeting and post it, and that's that. So social media, right? I know it's a very big topic and there's a lot of different ways you can go with it, but I hope that some of the few ideas I gave you, as well as these organization tips like using a social media calendar, can provide you with some direction on what to do. Oh, wrong way. All right, and like I said, there's more ideas that you can pick from for social media. But Illinois DECA actually promotes these things. It's not just like your chapter and every chapter for itself. Illinois DECA wants your chapters to succeed, and they want your chapters to survive for years and years, and that comes through community. So we actually give points for some of these ideas. If you post your chapter's member of the month on Instagram or Twitter, you'll get 5 points. If you spotlight DECA chapter alumni using the hashtag Illinois DECA Proud, you get 5 points. And if you post a picture of 3+ members in DECA merch on Instagram or Twitter, you get 15 points. And these are not the only options. If you speak to your iConnect chapter coordinator, whoever that is, there's so many different ways that you can get involved through social media specifically. They really don't take a lot of time and can actually reward you. Because again, your chapters are part of Illinois DECA. So Illinois DECA thrives on your success. And if you don't have a iConnect coordinator, go to Illinois DECA and you can register an iConnect, but just check with your advisor before you do so. All right, opportunities for social events, right? You know, social media, that's the digital side of it, but it's only digital, right? Nothing like real is happening yet. This is where you can bridge your community with actual events where, you know, people and DECA members and even non-DECA members can get involved. So one thing that I've seen across many DECA chapters that has actually been successful is a DECA night style event where it's just like a school night, maybe even a Friday night. You take your DECA members, you take your DECA non-members, and you go to some venue and you just have fun. Like it doesn't have to be, you know, a business topic. No one's gonna be sitting at like Buffalo Wild Wings and, you know, doing a role play. Like no, you're just going there to have fun, to talk. It's just a gathering, like a gathering of friends, not necessarily a DECA-based gathering, right? Like the emphasis isn't so much on DECA as it is just DECA members being there. So it's just an opportunity for underclassmen, upperclassmen to socialize. It's also a great way for, you know, advisors to come and even speak with some of the members' parents. And it's really just a team bonding event. So something my chapter has done in the past has been a DECA night at Buffalo Wild Wings, which is really fun. Everyone just, you know, went to Buffalo Wild Wings and, you know, ate the food and talked and watched football. Really had nothing to do with DECA, but it was still the DECA chapter, and it was still a very fun way to just get to know everyone. If you can plan one of these, you know, probably for the start of the year would be better. I know it's already like November, soon to be December. So maybe you want to do this right before regionals or right before state as a way for people just to get to know everyone. Or maybe it's an idea you want to store away for next year. So Buffalo Wild Wings is a good option. Pinstripes is also a good option, right? You could be eating pizza and bowling, but it's still a good way for, you know, a freshman, a new DECA member to get to know like a senior who's maybe one of the leaders there. But those types of DECA nights takes a lot of planning, right? You need to talk to the venue, see if they can have that many people. Maybe it's like closed for a certain day, whatever it is. There can be some unforeseen circumstances that you might not necessarily want to deal with. So, you know, a few low effort options that take a little bit less planning are DECA nights within your school or within your chapter. So it could just be like, you know, instead of having your typical DECA meeting where you're taking like a written test to practice for your cluster exam, instead, maybe you could be watching The Wolf of Wall Street, right? I mean, maybe you'd have to get permission, right, from a teacher and whatnot, but it would be a good way to just, you know, sit down and just enjoy a movie kind of related to business, maybe go and order some food, and it's a great way for people to actually get to know each other. Another thing that you could do, which is a little bit more effort, but I think probably a little bit more rewarding, is a Shark Tank style event where you have people come in your chapter. It could just be any DECA members, and they can just pitch their dumbest business ideas to, you know, maybe some judges, whether that be the leadership board or advisors. We plan to do a Shark Tank thing in my chapter, and one of the ideas I was going to pitch would be like, you know, turn signals on shopping carts. That's something that someone might want to pitch. It could be something even dumber, who knows? But it would just be a really laid back, fun way to get people thinking and talking about business, and also serve as some type of community event that kind of brings the tone back from DECA as, you know, ultra competitive. But you do want to be a little bit careful, right? Like DECA has a reputation for being very professional. You know, when you think of DECA, you think of suits, you think of ties, you think of dress shoes, right? Social events are an opportunity here to be less academic and less professional, right? More relaxed. And it's a way to appeal to non-DECA members, right? Your most, you know, convinced, like super committed DECA member should be drawn to these events. But so should someone who maybe just heard about DECA on like the morning intercom announcements, right? These events should try to appeal to everybody. But I said you want to be careful because it does kind of take planning and some organization, right? What you don't want happening is to organize one of these events and, you know, everything's ready and you go to your DECA night and maybe no one is there because you didn't promote it enough, right? Or maybe you get the Wolf of Wall Street ready, but it turns out like your teacher says, no, you can't watch it because it's rated R. Whatever it might be, you just want to make sure that everything is set in stone and it's promoted. And that's how you can optimize these social events. Because I mean, you don't want to take a lot of time out of your schedules and your advisor schedules to create something that just isn't going to work. So social events are a great way to take chapter in a new direction. Few more ideas. You could host a sports game, right? Maybe it's like everyone wants to play basketball, but they have to be wearing a suit or something. Again, it has nothing to really even do with DECA so much, but it is just a fun community event. Maybe you could start a school tradition, right? In my school or my chapter, the DECA leadership board wears green and gold ties, which is our school colors, green and gold, on loyalty days. Maybe you want to take your DECA chapter to Six Flags. I've been in some schools where I saw flyers for DECA chapter that was going to go to Six Flags. Maybe you even want to do a school-wide fundraiser, or you could reach out to your local chamber of commerce and see what opportunities they have for maybe a group of your DECA chapter members to get involved. These have nothing to even do so much with DECA, but again, it's just a way to get your community involved. You do want to be careful though, in that you don't want to overdo these, right? You don't want to completely destroy the reputation of DECA as a professional business club. Maybe you want to do these like once every 3 months or something would probably be a good idea. It could even be like you want to do 2 in the whole year. But don't overdo them, right? Because at the end of the day, DECA is for competition. You just don't want to fully push that every single time there's a DECA meeting. Fundraisers are also a really good way to get people involved through kind of a united goal, right? Like one of the things that our chapter did was a fundraiser where we sold coupon cards for Domino's Pizza, and it was a really great fundraiser. Actually, we had freshmen to seniors going around the school trying to sell DECA cards. What that did was it united us through a common goal, and it got the word out for DECA throughout the school. By the end of the fundraiser, whatever 2 weeks it lasted for, almost everyone in the school knew what DECA was selling, and that the DECA club was even up and running this year. So fundraisers take some time to plan, which is totally fine. So if you can't do a fundraiser, that's okay. But DECA does also offer some really straightforward fundraisers that you can even get started as soon as tomorrow. DECA, with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, one of its partners, is hosting a fundraiser for holiday pinups, where you can sell holiday pinups virtually or within your community for recognition at ICDC. Whatever fundraiser you do, you just want to make sure that all chapter members are participating, or as close to all the chapter members are participating, so you can actually feel like a community. Because if it's just like 1 or 2 people, or like you just your leadership board, there's not really a point to the fundraiser, and it's not really going to do much for your community, which is why you want to try to get everybody involved. That's a common theme I've been saying, right, throughout this whole leadership council. Get everybody involved, whatever that might be. All right, now I know in the beginning I said the community is probably the most important aspect of a DECA chapter. I still stand by that, but I think second to the community is obviously a curriculum, right? Because at the end of the day, these people need to compete. They're going to be competing in role plays. They're going to be competing in written events, and you do want them to be prepared. Because another thing you want to be careful of is people putting a lot of effort into some of these events, like a written event, but then not doing good at state because the chapter didn't provide enough guidance. That can defeat the whole purpose of a community. So that's another thing you want to be careful of. So here's a few ways you can kind of build a community through your curriculum. This isn't a full guide on how to build a curriculum, but it's just going to focus on the ways you can build a community through curriculum. All right. One of the first things you can do is create a mentorship program. What a mentorship program is it gives veteran members, or DECA members who've maybe been a part of DECA for 2 or 3 years, an opportunity to work with the new members. And new members can reach out to these mentors with any questions about DECA, or maybe it's even just some random business question. Mentors are a great way to do this. So here's a little bit more information on how you could actually implement this and what the real benefits are. So the main premise for a mentorship program is to have your upperclassmen be the DECA mentors and have your underclassmen be your first year DECA members. So couple steps, right? The first step here is to divide your cluster into multiple year or veteran DECA members and first year DECA members. So maybe if your cluster has, say, 50 people, maybe 15 of those are juniors and seniors who've been in DECA for a year or two, and 35 of those are just new DECA members. All right. So now you have those divisions. Number two would be to divide your chapter by cluster. So you could have like a marketing group, you could have an entrepreneurship group, you could have a business admin group, whatever that might be. Now, the next step is to take a few mentors and 4 to 8 members and create a group. So maybe the marketing group, you have 2 seniors who've done marketing for a few years, and you have 6 new members who are brand new to the marketing cluster and don't really know what DECA is about. So now you have a group of 8 with 2 mentors and 6 members. That becomes the smaller DECA community. Now, during your actual DECA chapter lesson plan, whatever that might be, these DECA members will carry out the activity within their small group. So whether that's a group of 8, the mentors will be leading the activity and the 6 members will be interacting with whatever that activity is. So what happens is you can take a massive DECA chapter that's like 100 members maybe and break them up into like 10 smaller groups. And within those small groups, all the members are having an opportunity to talk, to learn, to share their ideas, participate in role plays, whatever that might be. And it also serves for mentors to be a resource, right? Some of my closest DECA friends were actually my mentors when I was a freshman and new to DECA. I had a senior DECA mentor in the marketing cluster, and I would always ask her questions about, like what's the best way to approach this performance indicator, or how should I balance timing? Some of these questions don't really get asked in a regular DECA meeting just because there's so much going on. But if you can make it so that it's just a small group and everyone has a chance to talk and participate and ask questions, that's your smaller community. And your younger members are going to see the value in DECA and see upperclassmen as a resource and someone who's friendly and someone they can talk to. So mentorship program, it's a really great way to build a sense of community within your cluster without even leaving the classroom. But you want to be careful with the mentorship program too, because it does require accountability, right? Whoever is leading out or carrying out the activities within those small groups, right, your mentors, they have to be sticking to the game plan, the lesson plan for that day. Maybe it's like a day where people are going to be discussing performance indicators. You want your mentors to know exactly what that's going to look like so there's not confusion. If that becomes something difficult to do, or it's hard to have your mentors take accountability, then I would say a mentorship program maybe isn't worth implementing, because the worst thing is to have a new DECA member just not feel welcome or just like really confused with what's going on in DECA. On the other hand, if you have a really big cluster with a lot of committed DECA members who are interested in a few leadership positions, this is a mentorship idea that would work very well. If you have a small chapter that maybe has like 20 people, I'd say you probably don't need a mentorship program, because at that point, you're already giving people lots of opportunities to participate in DECA, to talk about performance indicators, role plays, whatever that might be. So mentorship program, good if you have, number one, some committed DECA members who are looking for leadership opportunities. And number two, if you have a very large DECA cluster that can be divided into about equal or as close to equal as possible groups. All right, but now you have to put everything together, right? Because if you want to have a curriculum and also have your community, it's kind of a balancing act. So your curriculum involves a few different things, right? You have your written events, you got your role play, you have your performance indicators, and you have testing. Now it's really easy to get, kind of lost in one of these events and just like have a role play day where people are just role playing. But what that does is it can sometimes detract from the sense of community, right? Like if you do role play for 4 meetings in a row and it's just people coming there doing a role play and leaving, it's not very fun. It's not much of a community. So the number one tip I can give you for any activity that you do is to think of ways that you can incorporate collaboration into it. And with the mentorship program I was talking about before, collaboration kind of comes naturally, right? Like mentors and members, they will be talking. But if you don't do a mentorship program, which is totally fine, you have to think of ways that you can actually build collaboration between members. So for performance indicators, for example, right, maybe the topic is to just think of ways to actually answer a performance indicator in the context of a role play. Or maybe it's not even in the context of role play, just to get people thinking about a business idea. What you could do to incorporate collaboration is to just have a group of DECA members just write down as a group ways to answer performance indicators, right? Maybe you just give them a Jamboard, maybe you give them a part of a whiteboard or just a large Post-it note or a large sticky note, give them a few markers and say, go, right? Answer this performance indicator however you would. That's a really low effort way to get collaboration. And if you have a few, leaders like you who are at this council, just kind of nudging people to talk about them a little bit, you will see collaboration, or at least see more collaboration than what you would have seen if you didn't pick one of these activities. Maybe for role play, for example, right? I know role play is a little bit of a hard one because a lot of the role plays do turn out to be individual events, but maybe it's like you do a team role play where you take like 3 or 4 DECA members, right? Not 2 like the typical team event, but it's like 3 or 4 DECA members who are reading a role play prompt and they try to generate a good response as a group. Now, obviously, does that, simulate an actual DECA role play? No, of course not. But it is a good way to get people actually thinking about the role play and will be better suited for one of the earlier meetings in the year when people are still getting familiar with what a role play is. So, right, or it could be like getting immediate feedback and having the opportunity to discuss role play performance with a mentor. Take written events, for example. Written events is also kind of a difficult one because a lot of people who do written events kind of sometimes feel separated from the chapter because they take written events very seriously when they're not always required and not a lot of people in your DECA chapter may be doing them. So maybe it's you take a few written event people and you just put them in a group and you tell them to, read over a past winning written event and note some of the good things they did and some of the bad things they did. Or maybe it's a large peer review session where one student comes with a written event and a few people together as a group, kind of like a discussion, give constructive criticism. Testing is another really hard one because you don't want to just give people practice tests every week and just tell them to do it, right? Maybe if you give them like maybe 1 week in a month, you give them a practice test to practice for the cluster exam. Sure, that's fine. But if you're just telling them to take a test, day in a day after day after day, that's also really boring because no one wants to be taking a sample marketing cluster test on a Thursday afternoon, right after a long day of school. So if you want to teach them business concepts so they can do well on their written tests, then what you can do is you can create small groups and have them research a current event in business. And maybe it's, they just talk about a few main economic points, or maybe you give them a few principles in economics and you ask them to search for real world examples of them. That way, when you actually give them a test, they understand like what the significance is, and you're just building a base of business and economic knowledge that will hopefully serve them well when they actually, go to take their test at regionals, state, or ICDC. All right, so that was the bulk of the Leadership Council. Main ways to build community would be through social media, DECA social events, as long as you're careful about how you organize and plan them, and through a DECA curriculum, which is to boost collaboration. When I was talking about the DECA curriculum, the one word I said the most was group, because that's the main takeaway from here, right? You want to build groups where everyone has a chance to participate and everyone has a chance to learn from other people in your DECA chapter. That's the way to build a community. But something I did promise when I made this DECA Leadership Council is an opportunity for you all to talk about literally anything regarding DECA, like actually anything. It could be more questions about social media, which in that case, maybe I could bring the Vice President of Public Relations in a future Leadership Council to talk more about social media. Maybe you have a question about, a conflict in your leadership team in your school. Maybe I can give some advice for that. Or maybe it's you need resources for test prep. Whatever it might be, this is an opportunity for you to ask me. And if you're someone who's just listening and you have an idea, or maybe your chapter is doing something really well, it's an opportunity for you to unmute and ask something also, or even provide an answer. So this is a place where I will kind of step away for a little bit. And if anyone has any questions, you all can discuss, and I'll also be here to provide any advice. If no one has any questions, that's also totally fine. It's just an extra opportunity. But I want to provide it. So if anyone has anything about DECA that has maybe had nothing to do with this leadership council, feel free to unmute and just ask a question.
How does your chapter regulate leadership and management and like the responsibilities between those in leadership, whether it's board or a mentor program?
All right, good question. So leadership is always a tricky one, right? Because there's a fine line between one where your advisor is running the meeting and one where the students are leading the meeting. So the way our chapter does it is we have a specific leadership board and their specific roles. So you have your president who does most of the project management stuff. And then you have the people who are responsible for the curriculum. So they build ways that you can incorporate role play, you can incorporate events, you can incorporate testing. So they're making the actual resources. Then we have a few other roles where other DECA leaders can get involved, like membership. So they'll be thinking of ways you can get members actually involved in some of these activities in the community, and actually how to boost DECA membership so it can continue into next year. We also have communications, who's responsible for getting the word of DECA out into our community. So all the social media things I talked about, that usually goes to the person responsible for communications, just managing the social media page and whatnot. And lastly, we have someone responsible for chapter projects who runs the fundraisers and any larger events we do. Whatever the leadership board decides on doing, we communicate all of these to our mentors, because we do use a mentorship program. And that way the mentors can get a crystal clear idea of what's actually going on in the meeting. So that's how you can run a leadership board, or that's how you can have a leadership team in a chapter. Maybe your advisor might not allow it, but it's always a good idea to just ask your advisor and see ways that you can take a leadership role within your DECA chapter.
So I actually don't know much about leadership at like the state level for Illinois DECA, but like what grades like are most likely to apply for like Illinois DECA leadership positions, and how is like the best way to get those spots?
Okay, so a question that gets asked a lot actually. It's a question I asked at a certain point too, and I understand. So there is one rule for the leadership board is you have to have been a DECA member for at least 2 years. So typically what that entails is that you have to be a junior or a senior in high school to run for it, right? Because that's the minimum. But really, like, if you go to ildeca.org, which is our website, it's revamped now, there's a page on running for state officer, which has all the information. But the best way to do it at this point and be prepared for next year is to just get involved with the opportunities Illinois DECA offers in every way possible. So whether it's going to leadership councils or participating in some of the philanthropic events that we offer, all of this, what this is going to do is build your DECA knowledge and make you more confident to speak about them, which is ultimately one of the ways you're going to become a state officer if that's something you're interested in, right? A state officer has to show a commitment to DECA and also be elected by his or her peers. So if you're not, very committed to DECA, that will show, and you might not always get elected. So just show a strong commitment to DECA and participate in almost anything your chapter can do. And even though it's not a direct line to, a state officer role, it is going to build your experience and make you a better DECA member, which will in turn make you more prepared when it's time to run for a state officer. All right, anything else? It could be absolutely anything. Does not have to be related to this at all.
I had a question.
Yeah.
How important do you think taking like business classes at your school is for participating in DECA?
So, big secret. I've never taken a single business class at my school. Not one. The most I've taken is like AP macroeconomics, right? Just, it has helped for DECA role plays, but I also took that at the end of last year. But the first, almost the first complete 3 years of DECA, I did not have any business courses done. Did that mean I wasn't a good DECA member? No, I still competed. I went to ICDC. I'm talking here at a leadership council, right? So really what it boils down to is just having an interest in business and being willing to pursue some of these business topics and economic principles outside of school, right? Something I do a lot is I like to read current events, and that has helped me tremendously with role plays. So if it's just reading current events, that's a good way to boost your business knowledge. Maybe it's just going on, Investopedia and reading about what equilibrium is and what supply and demand is. These are the tips that are generally going to make you a better DECA member. And sure, it helps that, some schools offer business classes that can give you an edge in DECA. It's not always something you need in order to do well in DECA. So I will say, like, if you have an opportunity to take a business class and business is something you want to do outside of DECA, then totally go for it. It will help you in DECA. I can say that 100%. But if you don't take any business classes, don't let that, kind of smash your confidence, right? Just look for other ways you can learn a little bit about business, and that's going to be enough for about DECA. Even if you're willing to go to like investopedia.com and read something, that's showing that you have a commitment for DECA, and that's what you need for DECA in order for you to go far. All right, anything else? Again, it could be anything. All right, so again, if you have any other questions, you can email me. But one more thing before I wrap this up, and you can all go back to whatever you're doing this Wednesday night. So at the end of the day, these leadership councils are for you, right? They're not for me. So your DECA advisors within your chapter, they might be overbearing. They might want your DECA meetings to always be focused on curriculum. But at the leadership council, this is for you. And I can bring almost anything as long as it's like mildly business related or something to do with DECA. I can bring those topics to a leadership council. Doesn't always have to be super informational. Doesn't have to be, super content heavy like today it was. It could be something fun, right? Maybe you just want to learn about like some past business strategy, or maybe you want to have a Kahoot where we can offer prizes. I know James did that last year, if any of you enjoyed that. So ultimately, the future of the leadership council and what the topic is going to be up to you, at least for some extent. So I'm going to post like a 1-question survey in the Google chat. It'll take you about like 30 seconds to fill out. It's just asking what you want to see next. And depending on what that is, that can be the next leadership council. So just bear with me for about 30 seconds. I'll post a survey. And once you fill it out, you're free to go. All right, just posted the message in the chat. It's like literally it's 2 questions. It's like 2 questions, fill it out, and that's all. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything about DECA, you can always email me. Here's my email. Our next leadership council will probably be, I think, December 14th, most likely. Topic hasn't been decided yet because, again, I want to get your input first. But I hope to see you then, and I'll send an email out to your advisors with some more information as that date approaches. And I'll stick around here for any questions anyone might want to have, or maybe they don't want to ask to the larger group. But again, once you fill out that survey, that's all, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
You too.